UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomenon. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military projects, false flag alien invasions, PSYOP, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join the discussion now on UAP Crossfire.
And here we are. Commander, you're flight leader today, I believe.
I don't know if I am or not, but I'll take the initial lead position before I give the helmet tap and point to one of you to take over the lead. Obviously, hello, greatest audience on the planet. It's wonderful once again for you to be attending with us at UAP Crossfire. Chris DePerno, co-host, back from his Voyage of the Damned experience, apparently, on his cruise.
Yeah.
He had a good time until the last day, and that nasty Mr. COVID showed up. Don Ecker, surviving earthquakes in his part of the world. So he's been through the shake and bake, so to speak. Now has lovely temperatures, and as you can see, no cracks in the wall in the background. Commander Cobra here, a little bit punchy. Been a very long and busy week on my end of it here up in New England. No earthquakes, no hurricane. The fall colors are just beginning, but just a little bit of excitement here on the farm with some sick animals, but thankfully we're back. Also, I like to point out, because it's important to members of my family, this is International Dolphin Day. So if you love dolphins, this is a day to give the thumbs up to the happy sea mammals that apparently have sex for pleasure and fun. I don't know. I had a marine biologist tell me that. I've never forgotten it. Don't know why. I do have a very fun...
I've heard they even will rape.
Wow. I don't think we needed to go there.
Well, hey, if we're talking about sex and fun...
I don't think there's anything fun about the R word. And Flipper's rolling over in his grave with that remark. So now I'll desperately try to get the formation back into shape and back going on to our target. We have a great show tonight. We have two great folks that are coming on to join us. Darcy Weir and, I always want to say this, Andy, I hope it's Marcia or Marcia. I didn't get that part of it. I didn't get a chance to ask them in the warm-up. But I'm looking forward to having them on. They've done some great work, great documentaries, and a lot of energy, and I think folks are going to really enjoy the show. As always, I will start out quickly with God's peace that surpasses all knowledge and understanding. My wish to you guys, because we always race to the end of the show, there'll be arms waving, asking Don to put the brakes on so that we don't crash into the next show. Any special stuff to come up? I have a great...
Always blaming the sergeant. Yeah,
I always, you put me in the lead and I'm a commander. So what do you expect? The NCO is going to have some broad shoulders. Anything we want to grab before we bring our guests on? No.
Go ahead, Don.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just going to say it's great to be back. I mean, we had a little bit of a hiatus there just because I decided to go on a cruise with my wife after not having a vacation for a while. I'm not sure if I ever want to go on a cruise again because, as I told you guys off air, I caught COVID on our very last day. It was like a parting gift. You got to get a souvenir to remember the trip by. And two of us got 102 temperatures for our parting gift. And I can't go into the other stuff because it's just too gross. But I will tell you that we're both doing fine now. We're recovering from it, and my wife is having the DTs because she can't see the grandchildren, and so she's just been a miserable bear around the house. I actually had to shut the door and put a chair on it so this way she doesn't come storming in here and stuff.
This almost sounds like one of those Lifetime movies.
Yeah, well, that's the story of my life. It's a Lifetime movie here and stuff. Always an adventure, never boring.
Well, let's bring in our guests, please, and get them started because I know folks listening are.
I got a lot of questions.
Hey, how are you guys?
So I apologize, Andy, if I didn't get the last name. Is it Marcia or Marcia?
Marcial.
Marcial.
Marcia.
Is that Puerto Rican or Cuban or what is that, Andy?
Puerto Rican.
Puerto Rican. Okay.
Excellent.
I didn't want to say you were Cuban unless you were Cuban or something like that. You know.
I've been with Cubans, but I'm Puerto Rican.
Okay. I don't think there's any reason to be bragging so early in the show. I think you should say that. Now that's a little frosty, I know, but there was some off-air fun that we were having with names that will not.
Oh, geez, I didn't want to call him a communist in the beginning of the show.
No. So, Andy, you're coming out of New York, correct? That's where you're.
Yes, Long Island, New York.
Long Island. Whereabouts on Long Island?
In the middle.
In the middle. I had some pretty fun times out at some of the airports there back in the day, and good friends from Patchogue back in the day.
Yeah, I'm actually very close to Patchogue.
Beautiful part of.
Is that near Westbury or East Meadow?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, Andy, this interrogation will continue through the show, just so that you know you will be peppered with questions like this.
Darcy, wait a minute. If we're going to do an interrogation, let's get some bright lights on them.
Yeah, there you go.
I did find out during our talk with Richard Dolan from the last documentary that he actually grew up in the same town I live in now.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that was interesting.
Very interesting. And Darcy, where are you coming from?
I herald from the Great White North. I'm in Canada.
Beautiful. Whereabouts?
Vancouver, British Columbia.
Spent a couple lovely port calls when my icebreaker was out of Seattle, up in Vancouver, back in the day. Kind of one of the more beautiful parts of the world and great part of Canada. Obviously, when I lived in Vermont, I lived right on the border for a while, so we used to travel into Montreal on a fairly frequent basis.
Yeah,
well, gentlemen,
great.
You gentlemen have done some pretty incredible work. And I want to. We do have some trailer and some images that we'll bring into the proceedings, but I'd like you guys to take turns and open up a little bit tonight. Specifically, anything you want to talk about, but the Puerto Rican project that you did, and the documentary that's out. I believe it's on Apple TV, if I'm correct.
That is correct. Yeah.
Well worth the. There's a number of ways to get in to see it. You don't have to be an Apple TV member. There are ways that you can view it through Apple, and I urge people to take the time to do it. I think Puerto Rico is one of the more interesting places with its proximity to the Bermuda Triangle, which I just read recently on a internet banner that's been solved. Science has solved the Bermuda Triangle, which is always great to hear when science has solved something. That means it's done. We don't have to ever talk about it again because it's been solved. So we got that. There has been a long documented history going back to native peoples before European encroachment, settlement, and encounter with Puerto Rico with activity. I mean, it's been amazing. And you gentlemen kind of jumped very quick into the area that I've always have seen, where the paranormal aspects of some of these things intersect, coincide, layer, however you want to put that, happen at the same time.
I have a remark, and I want to direct it to Andy. Back when I and my wife were publishing UFO magazine in the early to mid 1990s, is when we first got rumors and then stories and then later witness testimony about a cryptid creature called the chupacabra. That's where they first seemed to pop up, show up, was in Puerto Rico. And then before too long, my God, they were talking about this cryptid being in Florida, Louisiana, Texas. Andy, when your family were living there, was there legends or mythology about this creature, the goat sucker, an animal that purportedly drank blood, et cetera, et cetera? What do you know about that, if anything?
That was, believe it or not, that wasn't around during my childhood. That happened more after I moved to New York, and I believe that was like the early '90s when the chupacabra first, began. Right, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was the early '90s or late '80s, something like that. Um, but there's always been stories of UFOs and alien sightings and stuff like that in Puerto Rico. That's always been around. But regarding that specific thing, not when I was living out there, no.
Well, during that period of time, we also started getting hit with a ton of rumors that this might have been some type of black operation working with cryptids or something by the government. Now, this, like I said, let me stress, this was rumor, but that apparently one or more of these things escaped. Have you heard anything about that may point a direction to where these things ended up coming from?
Not really. All I know is that after, I believe it was a year after the first original reports of this creature was the Virginia incident. And what I found interesting was that a lot of the depictions of what this creature looked like in Puerto Rico, to me, matched what was seen in Virginia during that incident with the UFO crash. They basically described them the first original descriptions of this creature in Puerto Rico were much different than later on. Eventually, it just got completely sensationalized and it just turned into some massive thing with spikes all over. I mean, it was like ridiculous. But the original descriptions of this creature was that it was a fairly small, like it had red eyes. It had these like bulges on its head, if I'm not mistaken. It had three toes, three fingers, or whatever you want to call them. And the interesting thing is that when you look at the description, or when you listen to the description that those three young girls gave of the creature they came into contact with, it was actually very, very similar. The creature had red eyes, three toes, or whatever you want to call them again, three fingers, if I'm not mistaken, and he had these weird protrusions on its head. So, me personally, I feel like they're connected. It may just be the same exact thing, just seen in Brazil.
Right.
The only difference really is the Puerto Rican creatures were sucking goats.
I mean, yeah, I don't know if they ever had any incidents like that in Brazil, where something similar was occurring. But I just found it very interesting that the descriptions were that close, that they both resembled the same, or at least sounded like the same creature.
Guys, what about in your trailer? I was watching your trailer, and you interviewed a guy that said he saw something like a monkey darting across the road.
No,
So,
it wasn't a monkey.
Are you saying that's about the same thing as what you're describing now?
No, that was Andres Maldonado, and he said he thought at first when he saw it, it was like a monkey or chimpanzee or something, because it was quite big running across the road. But later on, he actually caught a full view of these things, and there was multiple, and looked a lot like a gray. Like he said, his description of the thing was that it looked like a fetus with black eyes.
Okay, but Darcy, how long did he take a look at this? I mean,
he had repeat visits of these things.
Right.
Okay.
According to him, he saw them over a long duration. And he met a humanoid, like a human alien, pretty much is what he described it at, let's say the person as. But more looked like Eastern Indian, like somebody from India, not like a Puerto Rican. And
What was the communication about?
well, over the course of, I guess, like 2 years, he said that this guy was meeting with multiple people on the island, and his little sort of, let's say, robots or genetic androids were these like gray type things, and they were his servants. They would go around and do stuff for him. He would meet with specific people on the island. Andres was one of them, and he wanted to educate them on the idea that we're not alone, that our planet is going to go through extreme peril, that, you know, there will be a time in the future that they're going to make their presence known, and they're concerned about our future and, you know, trying to help us not destroy ourselves.
Why haven't they? I mean, Darcy, I know this is third-hand knowledge, but in order to understand how this UFO disclosure phenomenon garbage is going on, you know, nobody is actually saying, hey, they're here and they're doing something medically for us. They're doing something environmentally for us. There's all I've heard, and I'm not, first of all, let me take it. I do believe in UFOs. I do believe in abductions. I do believe in that. However, I question stuff when people say, oh, yeah, they're here to help us. I haven't seen any of that. I haven't seen anything come out environmental that say, hey, we're going to show you how to clean up your water. We're going to show you to stop wars. We're going to show you how you could take care of situations and hunger and poverty.
Yeah.
There's none of that crap going on.
Yeah, there's no indication that God or angels has done that either, you know, but a lot of people believe that.
Wait, time out. And I don't want to get this into a spiritual thing, kind of, but
not yet, at least.
What's that?
Not yet, at least.
Not yet, at least. But we do have some evidence of gods and angels and everything. And there are testimonies of people who have come back from dead. There's also people who have experienced different types of things. And there also is the Bible. And there's also evidence. I just watched an evidence today that they found blood that they can't understand, that they believe where Jesus died on the cross, and it only had 24 chromosomes, where most, you and I have 40 some odd chromosomes. All right. This one has 23 from a female and only one chromosome from a male, that they can't explain that. It's not animal. It's a human, because it has the 23. So we do see evidence, and just like we see evidence of alien stuff. But I want to get to the second level.
That's exactly my point. We have a lot of testimony from people that have had contact cases. And, you know, we have different types of testimony. We have negative, we have positive. This is just one of those, let's say, positive contact cases where there's some kind of...
Well, you know, I got to say, from a historical perspective, a lot of what you were just saying, in the future, they're going to help us with our health, with water, with cleanup, blah, blah, blah. This bears a striking resemblance to the contactee movement in the 50s. The same type of platitudes were being thrown out allegedly by the Space Brothers to the contactees, people like Adamski.
The Galactic Federation and Ashtar Command.
Yes. Well, Ashtar Command. I could talk about that a while, but
I'm going to let me grab something back here a little bit before we dive further down this hole. Andy, Darcy, give me a couple minutes how you guys connected up, how you guys formed up to do these projects. And then give the audience a bit of an overview of what we're talking about in this documentary on Puerto Rico.
Go for it, Andy. I'll let you start
what's the backgrounds that led you to these places and how you guys teamed up?
Well, me and Darcy met from his last documentary. He knew that I was the individual who had leaked the Department of Homeland Security videos that the CBP last year finally released and confirmed to be authentic. So he called me up, asked me if I wanted to do a segment on it to speak on the videos. I told him, yeah, sure. So we went, we did what we did. And then afterwards we started talking, and I kind of started, letting him, basically going into the whole Puerto Rico thing. And I'm like, there's a lot going down there. And it's not a lot of focus being put onto the island with so much activity, especially, being from there and seeing it firsthand. And eventually he got interested in it. He said he threw out the idea of possibly doing it. And then I informed him one day that I knew of somebody who would be a very good help if you can get in touch with him. And that was Jorge Martin. And Darcy reached out to him, and he was able to get in contact with him, spoke with him, and found out, that he knew of a lot of people, was very knowledgeable. He's like I call him the George Knapp of Puerto Rico, because that's literally what he does. He's the guy who's been doing it for years, and the only guy who really covered this topic and the phenomenon. And next thing you know, we find out that he knew the guy who leaked that famous 2013 video. And me and Darcy calls me up one day, and he tells me, yeah, so we know who the guy is. I was like, what? And next thing you know, we're on a plane going to Puerto Rico to find this dude and meet him.
Yeah. So, we kind of skipped right to the most provocative subject in the documentary, which is a contactee. And people may disagree or agree with that. That's fine. But we start off the documentary with this individual who leaked the Aguadilla 2013 UAP footage.
Was that Thompson?
Pardon?
Was that Thompson that leaked that to you guys?
No.
Okay.
So this individual worked for the CBP, and he got access to the video from somebody who worked within the organization, but was actually in direct involvement with the video. So was actually responsible for recording it and tracking the UFO from the plane, the FLIR camera from the plane, which I believe is an MX-15 system.
Very familiar with it.
Yeah, they're very typically put onto CBP planes, helicopters, and some military craft. So that individual realized the importance of this footage. The guy that got access to it, he released it to Jorge Martin, and Jorge Martin released that to the public. But no one had really sort of found out the backstory of how that was recorded, and met the person who leaked it. And Jorge was very kind to offer to bring us into that story and let us find out more of the background. And that's what we're talking about tonight. And that's what I showcased in the documentary.
And how did Andy connect up with you? I'm curious.
So yeah, well, like Andy and I worked on the previous documentary where I got to interview Tim Gallaudet, former Rear Admiral of the Navy for 20 years. He was serving with the Navy, and for 7 of those, he was the chief oceanographer, and also worked for NOAA. We're talking about a guy that deals day in and day out with official information on our climate and our ocean, conditions, on behalf of the Navy to protect people and flight exercises and stuff. And at the end of that documentary, I wanted to showcase Andy's story, which was all about these UAPs that Department of Homeland Security caught on the border of Arizona and Mexico. And that was also caught by CBP. right? Because they're looking for cartel action. They're looking for illegals trying to get over the border.
It's
They
very
caught
heavy counter drug operation there.
yes, sir. So they're trying to find
surface activity. You bet.
Exactly. And they are credible observers. Let's say that they understand what they're looking at most of the time. They can figure out if it's like a cartel balloon that's trying to deliver drugs over the border. I think most of the stuff actually goes underground these days, but they just know what to look for when they're seeing people run across the desert or whatever. And so these 3 videos that Andy released were the rubber duck footage, the La Bruja, and the A-10 warthog footage.
Right.
They've been debated in the UFO community or the UAP community, but CBP themselves released in August of 2023 all of the documentation and proved that those 3 videos were actually very credible UAP encounters that they just could not peg as something prosaic. And I feel like his story was a little bit unsung, it wasn't championed as much. So I wanted to support that in my last doc. And then we were working on possibly going to Puerto Rico together and figuring out some stuff to cover there. And the Aguadilla footage is like kind of the holy grail of UAPs. You may disagree. You may think it's not real, but I think a lot of people have turned their attention to it. The Proof is Out There did an expose on it. The Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies poured over that and tried to debunk it as much as they could as like a Mylar balloon. It stands pretty tall among other UAP videos that are FLIR. And so we were excited when Jorge said, yeah, I can connect you with this source. I was like, Andy, let's go, vamos. And that's how we connected up again to do this doc. And I would say we're good friends and we communicate all the time. And we'll probably go back to Puerto Rico and cover some more stories.
Excellent. So I've got to jump in on a couple of things. First, I had a laugh. Obviously, Andy, you appreciate a Western Canadian take on the Spanish with vamos. I thought that was beautiful. I saw the smirk come right up in your face. That was beautiful. One other thing I want to dovetail, Darcy, on what you said. The folks that you're talking about in CBP, especially on the aviation side that are employing this from aircraft, and the folks that are on surface vessels, they are very, very good at knowing what they're looking at, which in a kind of a reverse way is very, very important because they know when they're looking at something that they don't know for sure what it is. And to me, that often gets overlooked. You're talking about fairly qualified observers. We always used to say this about, military trained intelligence officers, pilots, navigators, aircrew. They, you spend so much time looking at it, you have to usually have some kind of training to identify foreign military aircraft, all those kind of things. So when you get someone with that kind of pedigree and doing this a lot, I mean, this is 7-day-a-week type ops that these folks are going through. You now have somebody that this doesn't fit any of the normal wickets that they have experienced. And that lends a very important credibility to, we have something unusual. Now, I think we obviously default a little bit too soon to it being extraterrestrial. But I don't mind that as much as you've eliminated from your source folks some of the easy, it isn't the Mylar balloon, because it's not functioning as a Mylar balloon. And that's important because you guys have derived what I turn this to Don and Chris in a second. Not a lot of extra fanfare, because one of the things that Chris was talking about earlier when we started the show tonight, you get these events and you guys stick to these core events and you do the documentary kind of approach to it, where it's investigative kind of presentation. You are putting some of your thoughts into it, which I think, but you tell me that's what's happening. Now everybody else gloms onto it. The famous one recently was it was an Iraqi, a Islamic celebration balloon that was flying by. We all saw it. Then it was reports this thing was going in and out of the water. It was presented like it happened recently. Every possible conclusion. It was an octopus in the sky. It's an ET octopus that's floating around. Why are the people not shooting at? I mean, the whole thing, and obviously that's what happens. But your core information holds up to the kind of way that I would approach a mishap, an aviation mishap accident, an investigation of why something had happened. And my hat's off. Obviously, I don't have one on, but the expression "hats off" because, God, that's missing. Thank you, sir. That's missing in a lot of this stuff. Don, what do you have? Because I can see you're ready.
Well, yeah, it all of this, everything leads back to one area, and that area is disclosure. Ultimately, everybody connected with this field, that's what they ultimately hope for. Now, with that being said, we must understand, and believe me, this is as real as God made little green apples. There are at least two factions within military intelligence and the great big G, government, okay, that are vying for, ultimate control of this. Either, disclosure, at least in part, or forget about it. We're going to go to the grave. You'll never know more than you know now. Now, with that being said, all of these cases at one point or another, in my opinion, will suffer intelligence manipulation of one type or another. I've seen it for well over 30 years. It's not going to go away. It's going to happen. It's happening right now. And anybody that thinks we're on a clear ride ultimately to disclosure, well, buddy, they're in for a very big disappointment.
Oh, yeah,
Andy, Darcy, did you guys experience anything that you felt was interference that you thought was coming from outside sources?
Darcy did.
I mean, I've had some interesting experiences. I get trolled on social media pretty much, every time I release a new film. And this one,
but that would be pretty standard fare to the world we live in, right? I mean,
yeah.
You have people that don't even know what the subject is. They're just going to take the noun and verb and turn it around and say you're crazy.
Yeah, somebody posted under my trailer, wow, you made a whole documentary about a Mylar balloon, but that's a fucking dunce that posted that.
Right.
You also have people that accuse you of nefarious behavior and pretend that you are like concocting and pulling all these strings behind the scene to, I don't know, like stop other people from having fanfare. That's something that's been thrown at me recently. I literally have time to do this, talk about my recent release, work on my other films that I'm working on, and spend time with my family. That's what I'm doing.
It's called divide and conquer.
Yeah,
so that's what those people will try to do.
Yeah.
Darcy, are you thinking that's coming from within the community of UFO for people that are fighting for some place in the pecking order, or do you think it's a third entity that's just trying to, cause the internal squabbles?
I wonder sometimes if there's IC work being put behind these people or funding, because the DoD has nearly $1 billion in funding. What would you do with that if you wanted to squash conversation and intelligent thinking on this subject? Well, you could throw a couple $1,000 to a bunch of scumbags in the community and get them to drum up drama that's not right. But, I don't know. That's just a hunch. If you believe some of these other people that have come forward in this sort of movement to bring about more disclosure, Some of them have been hassled by their previous bosses in the DoD. And it makes sense. Logically, to me, you're going to disavow somebody ever worked for you. You're going to break down their credibility trail. And then you're going to prop up other people that are going to attack them. So it could be working that way. But I've also had my computer hacked when I released the last documentary. Walked into my office, saw the mouse moving independently, pulled the Ethernet on it, and that thing's not going online anytime soon. That was the week that my last documentary released with Tim Gallaudet and a whole bunch of other testimony in it. Yeah, and I just get harassed. Like, I get these kind of like violent sounding emails and stuff sent to me, and it's like ridiculous. You know, I don't care. I'm just doing what I like. You can get out of the way because I'm not budging is pretty much
the freedom of speech part. Obviously, the freedom of speech part always comes into these discussions, and I think that's you're always going to find people are going to support you for that, even if you don't agree. No one can fault you on your approach. And Darcy, your work follows the kind of critical thinking and investigation that I want to see. Like I said, there was no doubt when I watched the show that I knew what you were, what your maybe thesis item was, but I knew what was the documented material. Now, I don't have to agree with it, but it's evidence that's presented. You weigh it, and that's the part of it. Chris, I saw you getting ready to motion on something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Darcy, we're seeing this phenomenon all over because when you got $1 billion in a budget and you're going to dole that out, if you notice, there's all kinds of UAP groups, UFO groups coming into existence now because they think they might have a chance for that money. People have actually come out and said, hey, we're going to try to get some funding out of the government, and you're not talking $10,000. You're talking, $500,000, $600,000, $1 million. There's been talk that all these other places have agendas, these private corporations or private organizations that are UAP investigations are trying to get government money for this. So it's cutthroat. And I can understand because doing a documentary like you've done in the past, and I'm sure you're going to do in the future, people are looking at that and saying, damn, I wanted that information. Damn, I could make money off of that. That's the first thing. It's human nature. Money, money, money. Am I right on that, Darcy?
Well, I think everybody deserves to make a living. We need to.
Yeah, but you don't cut somebody's throat to make a living.
Yeah, I don't cut somebody else's throat. I only ever ask for what's, appropriate, and I offer what's appropriate, and I'm not a rich man off of covering this beat. I'm not some UFO cult leader that sets up, a fund for myself and gets thousands upon thousands of dollars. I'm like literally taking a gamble on producing these because some of them might just completely sink and some might swim. Some people might hate my work. Some people might like it, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but one of the things I was told by somebody I respect is that one of the reasons why disclosure don't happen is because they're afraid that there will be panic. They say, look, Chris, human nature is always to be suspicious of something that's very new and dangerous. They always leave it to dangerous. And we see through history, like Heaven's Gate and other cult factions, people start dying. And I'm not talking about one or two. I'm talking about let's drink the Kool-Aid or, let's all take the cyanide because we're all going up to another consciousness or some crap like that. And I've had reports, literally police reports, where people thought that, they heard about, aliens are walking among us, and they think their next door neighbor is an alien. They take the 12 gauge out and start shooting at the guy, by his shed, thinking there's a spaceship in there. So, we have to be careful what we put out there. We want to put out real good stuff, but some of the crap that's coming out nowadays can be causing violence. And I wasn't like this,
months ago, but I actually started studying some of this stuff, and I started seeing. I says, "Holy crap! I can, if the president comes out tomorrow on the front lawn and says, you know what, guys, there's other intelligence life in the universe. They've been visiting us, and I'm telling you here today, they're walking in among us. There will be, I don't know how much, but there will be problems in the United States and other countries. That's a fact. Human beings are human
Chris,
beings.
I got to dovetail two things. I don't agree that the government, this to me is the government feeling that they have to control the message because they have to protect me from myself. And I'm tired of that. I'm tired of that. And I don't agree with it. And the other part dovetails into exactly what you're saying. And I'm interested what Andy and Darcy will say. I'll start with Andy. I have the feeling that when you have been lying this long or manipulating or controlling the information, is that a nicer way to say it? Lying is an ugly word. So we'll just say controlling the message. That when you get this far down and you have two guys like Andy and Darcy who have someone who reaches out to them and provides information because the populace is exposed more and more now to more information. And now there's more methodology. I mean, anybody with an average phone now can create content that can be uploaded within seconds of creating that content. Doesn't mean it's good, but I mean, there's no more film, there's no more developing, there's no more putting it through some kind of a combine. It's instantly going into the internet. And now the government that feels like our self-appointed betters that want to protect us from ourselves have to perpetuate this control aspect. And you guys like yourselves throw that off. You start, it's the opposite of the boy putting the finger in the dike, right? You guys are pulling out the little parts and some of that water starting to come through and people are going, whoa, what is this? I mean, Andy, this is something that's, you are the third person that I know that's native to Puerto Rico that has talked about the experiences. And I find it's very much like when I talk to people that are originally from Britain, they talk very freely about paranormal activity because it's just part of the culture that you talk about, haunted buildings and places that have interesting happenings. Puerto Rico has that same kind of legacy that, and people freely talk about it. I mean, they talk about those experiences.
I mean, I just want to touch up on what you were saying in regards to like government and all that. They don't like when people like, for example, us, like you mentioned, do what we do because they view us as children. They view us as not capable of making the right decisions without their guidance or without their leadership.
Agree.
So, and that's what they want to keep. They want to keep that control, basically. They want to have that, position where, I mean, and honestly, I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking about this today. I've actually been thinking about it all week. I keep hearing like Matt Ford. I love his show. Very insightful, very knowledgeable. He has really good questions. He's always talking about the political side of this. And I noticed that, and not just him, but in almost every major podcast, they always bring this subject up in a political way. And it's like, that is the wrong way of viewing this entire topic. Like you're doing it.
I completely agree.
Yeah, like doing it like that is just injecting what you don't need into the topic. Like the whole point of this is to try to open your mind to something different, to get you to think for yourself and to come up with your own theories but logically, grounded on reality. And I just keep seeing how there's just this need to have to hear it from the government, have to hear it from the military. Oh, Luna, whatever, and all these representatives, and they got to come forward and have these hearings. But what's going to come from that that's going to benefit you? What are any of us going to benefit from that? Nothing. We're not going to benefit from that. They're the ones that are going to benefit. Whoever's got the technology is going to benefit. All we're going to get is, yeah, they exist. And if we feel like it, we'll give you a little something of theirs to play with and keep us entertained. But other than that, at the end of the day, we're not going to be behind the seat of a UFO flying into Mars tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not going to be us. So this need and desire to have to hear it from government and get their approval, stamp of approval, that to me is just like, it's, to me, it's showing just how many sheep are really out there, that they need that information to somehow get this like realization that this is 1000% real, and it doesn't give a shit about our government. It doesn't give a shit about our structure. You know what I'm saying? That's just us. We are doing that. And me personally, that's why I stay away from that as much as possible. I'll listen to people talk about it just because I like to stay a little, informed of what's going on. But other than that, I could give two shits about who's going to be standing in front of what pulpit and demanding what questions of this person who's only going to give half-ass answers. Where at the end of the day, even if Lockheed Martin has these craft, which we all do, we all know they have it, right? You honestly think with the amount of time we've given them to come up with these answers and come up with this information that we requested, they haven't already fucking made the moves to get that shit out of their building and put it somewhere else and it's gone? That shit is not where it's going to be. The only ones that are possibly even still there are things that cannot be moved, like the ship that supposedly they built the building over, whatever. But anything else that's mobile is no longer going to be where it was. You understand? There's too much to gain from this kind of technology, and people in those positions are too greedy. They're not going to let that go willingly. It's not going to happen. And the fact that I see this all the time, where people believe that, oh yeah, they're gonna come and tell. No, they're fucking not. They're not going to say shit to us, because it's like, and I put it like this: if you're a gamer, that's like you getting the cheat codes to a game and having the one up on everybody. Because that's literally what it is. It's a cheat code to reality. You're able to do things no one else on the planet can do. So you now have an advantage over everybody. Why would you give that up? Why would you let that out of your hand?
And I can give you a good reason why you don't want to give it up, because if you're grinding out an economy and a world order that you think you have some kind of, management of, this is going to upend everything, and you're caught in the proverbial lie. We've got about 9 minutes. What we're going to do, folks, is at the end of this, we're going to run the player. We're going to run the trailer and go into our break. So we'll be managing that up. The trailer is about 2 to 3 minutes. It's worth watching. We'll go into break, and then we'll pick it up on the backside. Don, you look like you're ready to jump in. What do you have?
Well, as far as politics, okay, let me tell you the sad freaking story. They're everywhere today and in everything. They have been for the last several years. This goddamn topic suddenly took on a new life in December of 2017 when former, now deceased Senator Harry Reid, the senior senator from Nevada, held his press conference. Now, I think everybody that knows what the hell they're talking about realizes there are few places on the planet that are more connected than Nevada. Okay. Harry Reid held a press conference where he admitted that he and two other senators gathered together roughly 22 million bucks, which, hey, that's barely pocket change to those guys. But still, 22 million bucks. I wouldn't mind having 22 million bucks. But the bottom line was, he admitted they started this new program, secret program in the Pentagon to investigate aerial phenomena. Now, how much of that was real? How much wasn't? I have heard that a lot of that money ended up being funneled into Robert Bigelow's Aerospace Corporation. Okay. Bigelow's been a UFO nut and fanatic since he's been a kid. All right. We did some research and investigation in years past on Bob Bigelow. And then the pot got a little juicier. Suddenly there's this television show called Unidentified running on the History Channel for a couple of seasons with who? A former Undersecretary of State for Intelligence, Christopher Mellon. Lou Elizondo, who billed himself as the guy that headed up this secret project. A guy by the name of Justice from the Lockheed Skunk Works, and a freaking rock and roller named Tom DeLonge from Blink 182. Now there's a goddamn hand to draw from. So what happened to that? They started putting their hands out for money. Okay? All of this under the guise of disclosure, under the guise of political expediency. And then what happened? We ended up having congressional hearings. Now, I don't know about you guys. I'm old enough to remember the last time that happened, okay, back in the mid-'60s, when, among other people, Gerald Ford called for congressional hearings because of sightings that was happening in his state at a place called Hillsdale College, all right? Then what happened? Well, the Air Force sent, allegedly, Blue Book, okay, to the Condon Committee, where they farted around with it for some time, and then wrote the report, published their report, sent it out, and the Air Force could gracefully withdraw from it. Politics, all politics. If you think that you can take the political animal out of this, you're just playing with yourself, guys, because it's here to stay.
Unfortunately.
That's true. That's true. I think, like, either way, you're going to have politics in this phenomenon, right? Because it's the, should we tell the people or should we not? And we're kind of at that stage, which we will call disclosure, regardless of whether you want to argue about how things went about with that $22 million in funding and the To the Stars Academy. All that stuff still pushed us to a point where soccer moms and Wall Street douchebags are talking about UFOs now.
It's a really great point, Darcy, because the new media has taken over society, and it has now rivaled, and it's changed how we do everything. I mean, just aware alone how we're doing these broadcasts and these shows. Anybody in the world could pick it up. It's available on there. Yeah. And that's not easily controlled. So if you can't easily control it, then you fill it in with a whole bunch of other things so that there's an overabundance of information. And then you have search engines that are, we've seen how that's happened. Search engines are being controlled. The government's connect. I mean, there's a very unhealthy situation that's going on there. So if the topics say, hey, this is a really good UFOs right now is a good distraction, or it's something that we need to get to, or we've lost control of this, overfill on that area. So I think you're tapping the part that is heartening about this is more people now are looking at this than they have ever before. And hopefully the conditioning allows us to have a better chance.
I'm sorry to cut you off there.
No, that's all right.
Look, like, I'm totally on board with what Chris was pointing out earlier, that there are cults, there will be cults, and especially when this subject gets blown even wider open, sure. If we do have, well, you know, today was announced that there's going to be a congressional hearing by the end of the month.
Darcy, I got to grab you. I'm pressing to the break. We're going to run to break so we can run the trailer. The trailer will go to break. We're going to be breaking at minute 5-7. Let's jump to the trailer, and then we'll pick it up. I want you to pick up that thought about the new congressional when we come on the other side. UAP
Darcy Weir is an independent researcher and filmmaker who has traveled around the world to study the UFO phenomenon.
Very under-the-radar release of some videos and documents. Now, with no explanation, all of a sudden, Customs and Border Patrol has released 10 videos from what looks like forward-looking infrared cameras.
Muchos vecinos de las áreas cercanas al lugar.
Andy and I
becoming friends, decided to embark on a journey to find the individual responsible for leaking this video to the public, and our journey into the UFO mysteries of Puerto Rico's history began.
This source 9 said that he would be willing to talk to you about the incident with the Transmedium UFO tonight.
Antes que comience, que realmente que sabe.
And just like that, the footage you see here started being recorded because the CBP FLIR camera operator saw something flying in the airspace over Rafael Hernandez Airport. In the middle of the ocean, on October 11th at approximately 10 p.m., Columbus stated he and Pedro Gutierrez, while on the deck of the Santa Maria, observed a light glimmering at a great distance. It vanished and reappeared several times during the night. How long has the UFO phenomena been present around Puerto Rico?
They actually changed the procedure for reporting right after, the access procedure, I guess.
Yeah, after that, they changed all the procedures that...
This object is reminiscent of an orb that I saw while testing a similar FLIR model out back after repair in December 2016. I couldn't quite determine the size of the object because there was nothing relative to compare it to.
This is supposed to be what you call a nuclear plant, but it never did work, and there's always 24 hours military people there.
Really? Did it melt down?
No.
Wait. Hold on. That's a nuclear? No,
Yeah.
It was going to be, but it never turned out.
It never turned out, no.
But why would there still be...
That's a triangle.
You took that?
Yeah, that's one at 8:30 or 9 in the morning, but the light was so strong.
And you took that when you were on a boat?
In a boat.
When we're coming from almost 10 minutes from here, I saw something that crossed from one side of the road to the other. But it was so fast that I can't see what it was. When I put the highlight, looked like something, a monkey, something
biological.
Yeah, something cross. When I put...
Well, welcome back to UAP Crossfire on KGR Radio DB. Chris DePrano, Don Ecker, my co-hosts, as well as our very special guests, Andy and Darcy, tonight. If you were with us for the first part of the show, you saw the trailer of what I consider a really good piece of work. I really like the approach that Darcy takes when he puts his documentary together, and Andy is a pretty darn interesting guy. It's well worth the time and hassle to run through. Sorry to jump and cut so much at the end there, Darcy, but if you can pick up a little bit where we were leaving off when we went to break.
Yeah, I was agreeing with the sentiments that Chris DePerno was expressing earlier in the show about like cults being something to worry about. You know, you see them forming on Twitter. A cult literally is natural to humanity. I think, the cult of the family is real. You've got families that are cults. You got, tribes of people that follow a certain ideology. And some of the most successful cults on the planet are religious cults.
Sure.
It's just natural. It's part of how we identify, communicate, and continue to survive on the planet is by prescribing to some kind of greater ideology. But I do think in ufology, or in this disclosure movement, the whole phenomenon, if it gets blown wide open and gets more mainstream, you are going to have new cult leaders pop up from left, right, and center saying they know the truth and follow them, and they've had the experiences with off-world beings, and you know, they're the true, everybody else is lying except for them, you know, that type of thing.
Sure.
It's a real threat. It's something that's already happening, and it's just going to happen more. So, you know, and it might even become a political party. Who knows? Like, mark my words, it's possible. You have RFK that basically wanted to be an independent and try and take away some seats from the Democrats and the Republicans. The two-party system is, you know, it's pretty hard, right? If there was a third party that allowed people to express their thoughts that didn't commingle completely with the Democrat or the Republican view of how we should be living. Not that I am, because I'm Canadian, as stated before. I think you never know. Like, the future may behold a political party that takes a stand on UAPs. You never know. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we need more broader discourse on this subject in politics, because in my opinion, it has been ruled by the Department of Defense, by the intelligence and defense community for many, many decades now. Having the actual government read into some of this stuff, it might make this a lot more interesting. And I don't know, maybe we'll get some stuff out of that.
Let me pop in here real quick, just very briefly. I want to tell you, Darcy, you are correct. As a matter of fact, we've already had, believe it or not, the UFO party. A guy ran for president back in 1960 during the JFK and Richard Nixon presidential race. His name was Gabriel Green. He was out here in California, actually out by the Integratron, if you know what that is, in Joshua Tree. Gabe Green ran for president on the political platform that once he was elected, he was going to release it all. And so, yeah, you're right. I could actually see that happening again. So
I think it's incredibly interesting, because you have seen all the main political parties, obviously, and then stepping down degrees of other political groups have all flirted with this. You'll see those announcements that come out. Now, Don and Chris have spoken extensively on this. I think we would be a little bit surprised. I think another part of this is that there is a huge body, whatever you want to call it. I don't particularly like the statement deep state, but there is a huge bureaucratic central blob of folks that are really the ones that are got to have their hands on the levers. You know, we elect politicians, and they make their speeches, and you know, we have all this fanfare that goes on, but that's the core group that's either by design or just by the very weight and drag of the bureaucracy. Things don't get put out, things get buried. I always will go back to that scene, to the first Indiana Jones. Top men are working on this, and the Ark of the Covenant is in a undisclosed plywood container being put into a giant warehouse, and the bureaucrat is telling you top men are working on that. And there's no doubt that the person is yelling that top men are working on it, if you put him on a polygraph, would pass, because he truly believes top men are working on it, and somebody else has made sure that it's been buried and its hand receipt is lost to the sands of time. And I think, again, that is a cult. That's a cultish activity that's going on there. And I think you're absolutely hit right on that nail on the head, Darcy, that we're facing this. And Andy, I gotta love the fact that you are one of those kinds of guys that I really applaud, because you're kind of a rebel. You're okay, got it. I'm going to ignore that, and I'm going to continue to press for what I think is right at our fingertips. And again, this is why I applaud the work you gentlemen did, especially on this Puerto Rican UFO documentary, because it revitalizes with some fresh cases, some fresh information, people talking. The supporting stuff that you put in there is not cartoonish. It's not foolish. It doesn't have that, mockumentary kind of angle, because I think that that's way too easy to go. I think that happens way too often now, because that's clicks, that's viewership, and unfortunately, that's what kind of makes that merry-go-round go around. People get fascinated by that. You avoided that. You kept it on target and on track. Chris?
Well, first of all, I echo what you said about that. But Darcy, let me ask you this, because this popped in because Don wrote a paper a while back, and it's a little bit of a, how would you, scary paper, I would say, in some respects. Suppose this topic, the true topic of UAPs, is so nefarious, so evil is probably the wrong word, but let me just say dangerous. That the government is actually, yeah, well, that's a good word. Yes, let's say destabilizing, and I'll tell you why. So I heard Tucker Carlson has always been a big UAP person, and one thing he said, and I can't get over it. He said that somebody actually told him one of the reasons why they won't let this out. And he says that it was so scary, so frightening to him that he wouldn't even tell his wife. Now, I don't know if I take that to the bank, but still, Lou Elizondo said that if the human race knew actually what was going on, they become very sober. Now, you got a whistleblower that's saying this. You got a guy who's been on television saying this. And you also hear this stuff from David Grush that says people have been killed over this. He says it in a committee meeting. He doesn't say this at a symposium where people are going, ooh, ooh. He says this in front of congressmen. And it almost they acted like they already knew that people were being killed over it.
Well, it is DC, and business, has to be handled. So
right. But I mean, still, when somebody says, yeah, people have been murdered over this suspect, you kind of want to see some reaction to it.
Sure.
And there wasn't much of a reaction.
Chris, like you said, the fact that nobody went, what? Excuse me? What did you say? Did I hear you right? That's incredible to me.
Yeah, and I can't get over that. So I'm saying, suppose there is something, Darcy. Have you ever heard, and I'm going to ask you because you've done a lot of this work, and I'll ask Andy too. Don't worry, Andy. I'm going to come to you in the second half of the show. I got a lot of questions about Robert Thompson.
Two former law enforcement officers. You always love when they say that. Oh, I'll be by to see you, Andy, in a second.
I'll be saying, you just give me a time. I'm finishing with Darcy. So, Darcy, in your times, is there something that you think, because as I said in the beginning of the show, there's nothing good they've done for this planet. There's nothing good that they've done for the human race. Maybe there is something so nefarious that we can't let it out.
I'm not a love and light like I do not prescribe to love and light theory. I think everybody should be somewhat skeptical about their fellow mankind, as well as what may be above or below, right? So I think it's very possible, if you look at certain anecdotal cases throughout history, abduction is not always a pleasant story.
Very frightening.
Yeah. And I've been speaking to Randall Nickerson, who's one of the more prominent abductees. He also made the documentary Ariel, which is about the Ariel school mass witness sighting in South Africa, and very well done, very well researched, documented, and showing that there was all kinds of UFO activity being reported by not only Air Force and civilians leading up to, but even after these people saw as kids these entities and possibly a craft in broad daylight. So even that experience for those people was not pleasant. There was, the psychological shock of it. Some people are really catching on with the term ontological shock that the kids went through from that experience. But you also just have ridicule, mainstream society, that type of thing, trying to push you back into your place. So one would ask, is any of this a positive for mankind? Should we have some intervention at all, or should we really be figuring all this stuff out on our own completely and be allowed to trip over our own shoelaces and, skin our arms and stuff, make mistakes? I guess the sort of opposite end of that argument is, are there human overlords that are not allowing greater progress for the greater population of mankind? And I think there's a lot of proof that there is that. We have oligarchs, we have royal plutocracy rampant throughout the world, and the corporations that run the planet, right? And we are just numbers at this point. We are just people that are programmed to think a certain way, to prescribe to a certain cult or ideology, and to stay quiet and don't think outside of the box, because that could rock the boat. So I think this phenomenon might be aware of some of that, or might be even possibly correlated with some of that control.
So you think they're working together?
I don't know. I mean, I can't say for sure that there's some kind of evil reptilian race or something running the planet behind the scenes in the skies and the oceans. But I think it's just the sheer fact that the truth about this subject is not fully disclosed is enough to know that we have too much control over reality, the powers that be. I'm not an anarchist, and I, pay my taxes and look after my neighbors and my family members just like any good citizen would.
Sure.
But if I do pay my taxes and I do those things, I do think the greater reality should be given to us, because we're owed that, in order to live the fullest and best lives we can.
Well, I think, Darcy, what you're saying is pretty simply, the government's supposed to be working for you. And that's got a little bit ass backwards as of late. Andy, come on, jump in. I know you're ready to join us here. Come on.
Well, jumping off of Christopher. So, and I've already mentioned this quite a few times.
My question to you was, Andy, Robert H. Thompson, Robert Thompson, right? He's a DHS agent. Is that correct?
Can I ask where you got that name from?
I'm a detective. I was a detective. This is my job, is to get
Unfortunately,
information.
I can't answer any questions regarding it.
You can't answer it? He already gave an interview. It's all over the internet.
Yeah, I still prefer not.
All right, here, I'll read it to you. After obtaining permissions to share the videos to raise public awareness, Thompson reached out to Andy Marcial, that's you, who runs a UAP-related Instagram account called UAP New York UAP Discussions. By the way, it's a great thing. Folks, you ought to go to that Instagram account. It's very knowledgeable. And I've always helped out the little guy. So he's saying about giving you these tapes. He said he went to his supervisor and said, hey, can I give these tapes out? And his supervisor said, sure, why not? And I'm a little suspicious of that. And if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. But I'm just telling, I'm reading it right off the internet.
So in regards to that, the only thing I will say is that the Department of Homeland Security, their main focus is drug and smuggling.
Their main focus is criminal
trafficking.
investigations. I got friends in DHS and stuff.
But
and,
I mean, in regards to that, at least when it comes to the surveillance aspect of it, that's what they're most interested in. So those videos were really not something that they were like, it can't be released to the public type of thing. They really didn't care.
Weren't classified, right?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they didn't care in regards to those videos.
Weren't you suspicious though about them giving them to you? I mean, and this is no disrespect, but I'm saying here's a DHS agent who claims that he gave you videos, and he says, I always wanted to help out the little guy. Now you got, and I'm just saying to you, you got David Grush going to Congress. You got Lou Elizondo, okay, going to Congress and everything else. You got Carl Nell, who was David Grush's, David Grush's boss, all right, speaking out on this. And here's this guy from Homeland Security, and nobody's really saying, what are you doing? Why are you putting these out to Andy? I just want to make sure that this information is correct.
Unfortunately, I can't get too much into all these questions you're asking because of specific reasons.
Can you give the reasons?
I kind of promised him outside of that. Outside of
he broke his promise to you because he gave an interview to the debrief. I was involved with that. But okay. outside of actually, I was the one that got the debrief involved and convinced him to do that with them. But outside of that, I don't really speak much of it because it was more of a promise to him that I would allow him to say what he needed to say on his own terms, and I wouldn't chime in on anything else because, he did it. Well, let me
ask you this.
Me.
Hold on, I'm not done. He didn't trust me with the information, and I don't want to. I want to respect that. You know what I mean? Like the fact that he went about doing the things that he did in that manner,
right?
And I don't want to overstep my boundaries.
You're right, and I can respect that. I'm just like I says, I'm reading something that the whole public is reading, with you in it and him in it. And my question is not really about what he's saying to you. It's basically you in your mind about him approaching you. Why approach? Because you even saying this thing is, I'm a little suspicious about this. I'm a little inquiry about this because, why me? I would say the same thing, Andy. I say, this guy coming from Homeland Security, why me? I
didn't make you took that one out of context. I didn't say I was suspicious of that. I basically said that because of like the fact that it happened to me. Like of all people on this planet, I happen to be this individual who this person reached out to. So I never questioned it honestly because he came off as very genuine. And what he told me basically from the beginning was he felt comfortable because I take no bullshit from nobody.
I will say, I'm just going to chime in here. Chris, why did the jellyfish video get released through Jeremy Corbell? Do you know why?
It's a good question. That's an excellent question, Darcy. Why? And nobody's been able to really answer that correctly. I hope you can.
The honest answer is somebody from a military source, obviously that had connections with that video being captured in Iraq. Maybe the same person that captured the Mosul orb took interest in Jeremy Corbell's work because he's now famous for covering the UFO beat in a certain way. And, he became famous after he did a set of documentaries that have all done really well. They've hit Netflix, all that jazz, right? That's sometimes all it takes for certain people to reach out to you. And people reach out to me all the time. Hey, you should cover this story. You should cover that. So what I'm saying here is Andy had a platform. He caught the attention of a guy named Bob who worked within the DHS. Maybe he didn't like certain other people in the community, and he entrusted these videos to Andy because he liked what he was doing.
Sure.
I think it's
and
as
that's
simple
all,
as that.
And it could be as that. But hear me out here, Darcy. I just want to explain this to you because I think Commander Cobra will say the same thing, and even Don might. So I'm a DHS agent, right? And I go to my boss and I go, hey, I got these 3 videos and I want to hand them to this guy here. I want to give them out to this guy. They're not classified. The boss is going to just say, just sure, or he's not going to say, well, what are you going to do with them?
I don't think it happened exactly like that.
Well, that's what I want to find out, how it happened.
But I don't think he can. I don't think he can say exactly how it happened right now. So you keep pushing that, which is fine. I would want to know too, but I'm not going to push that because there's a certain, why did people go to Don Ecker back in the day with UFO magazine and give him photos and videos to review, right? Like they covered the Colares incident and spoke to the former commander that was in charge of that stuff in Brazil, and then he showed a implant in his arm and wound up dead soon after. Like UFO magazine has done some pretty incredible stuff. Why did that commander in Brazil give his testimony to UFO magazine? Because he figured they were a reputable organization that was covering this beat properly, and they were going to do their due diligence with telling this story, which I think they did.
And Darcy, you just answered a very important topic. Here's a guy that's credible. I'm talking about you, Andy. Credible. It's got a great platform.
Yeah, we do this from time to time, Andy. We talk about the person in the room in the third person. I hope you like that. That means you've arrived. It really does.
Oh, shucks. Come on, man. You're not letting me have any fun. I'm getting back in my investigative skills. So anyways, here's Andy. He's got a great platform. He's known. He's got credibility. He doesn't take bullshit. I am suspicious. I'm suspicious of this guy putting this out here the way he did, or at least the way I'm reading it was. And I could be totally wrong. But let's say I want to put something out. I'm not a go to somebody who's a goofball. I'm going to go to somebody who's credible, like Andy. I'm going to go to somebody who's that. But there's an agenda behind it, is what I'm saying. There's got to be an agenda behind this, because the government doesn't really go and say, "Hey, let's just give this to this guy." Somebody in the hierarchy, because I can tell you, I was, if I did this, and my boss found out I did what I did, just give it to the press or something like that, I could have a boot up my ass so far I'd probably be licking his toes. Okay, yeah. So I mean,
I'm gonna jump in, Chris, for one quick second.
Okay.
I think you make a valid point. I'm gonna make another one. Things are pretty effed up right now. It doesn't surprise me in the least that way down the line supervisor gets approached. I'm going to assume, Andy, that your man has a relationship with it, and as you indicated, this doesn't depict anything that's going to show up in a court of law to prosecute a drug situation. Quite honestly, there's a wonderful interagency and interservice rivalry when maybe CBP or the Coast Guard catches something that the other guys are doing and they didn't tell you. And look at this, because a lot of the things that are caught are not openly disclosed military technology, military operations that are going on. And it's fun when you catch that. Sometimes it's actually part of the ensemble to operate in these areas to see how far you can get undetected. So that happens. But it doesn't surprise me in the least that you have somebody, and I think that the blob that I like to refer to in the bureaucracy sometimes realizes, let this run. This is going to provide us some cover, some diversion, some interest, and I think there are factions that are fighting. I'd like to hear, Darcy and Andy, what your reaction to this part is. There are internal factions fighting within my bureaucracy, my blob, that would love to embarrass one part, cause confusion, and kind of help throw off the narrative. What I think that the compliment is well placed. You have two men here that are following a formula that is in a very rare commodity. Okay. You tell me what the facts are, you tell me what you found, and you tell me what your opinions and what your reactions are to that. You present to me the evidence so I can conclude, and you throw in what you think it is. And then, of course, you're willing to come on a show like this and many others and talk about it. I'm not saying defend, talk about it. Now, that's getting rarer and crazier in the world that we live in. That, to me, is probably one of the scariest things that's happening to us as a entity of people, that we, you can't have anything but the narrative. If you don't follow the narrative, you're immediately a threat to whatever that is. And when the narrative changes, we're supposed to go, well, wait. A week ago, a month ago, you told me this is what it was, and now you just tell me, oh no, that's not it anymore. So,
well, one entity within the blob wanting to slip his dick in the butt of the other entity in the blob. Okay, that's much
I don't know
more.
where that came from, but I just lost my whole train of thought.
Yeah, well,
I don't even.
I don't know if I would. I think, like Chris, I'd be more concerned if you didn't lose your train of thought after Don Ecker, the silverback of ufology, comes out and
I'm sitting here trying to read something. So
and I got to tell you right now, I will go back to 1 hour and 29 minutes just to look at the absolute crack up faces on Darcy and Andy. I had my drink coming up to my lips. Thank God I was very close to the deck and I could make a safe emergency landing back to the deck, because I would have drowned in my drink here. Don, thank you very much for.
Well, I just call it like I see it.
Yeah, we know, and God knows that never needs to be ever said again about you, about calling it as you see it.
What's the psyop? I think that's the kind of like question here,
Perfect.
right?
Perfect
like,
way to put it.
What is the psyop? Is the psyop a game that's being played on the UFO community to not trust anything that comes out of credible government or intelligence / defense sources? Okay, that's one thing. Or is the psyop UFOs are real, but they're actually ours, and we'll create so much fear behind them that we're going to get permission from the masses, from the people that vote for people in office and so on and so forth, that there can be new laws to protect our skies and lock down our countries like we've never seen before, because people are paranoid about aliens jumping through their roofs at night and take them up in their ships. That could be a psyop. But the other thing is, if people believe one of those two psyops, the community is so paranoid already, the UFO community that is, that we turn against each other, and we make it an impossibility in our minds that there are good Samaritans still out there. People that are interested in this subject, that possibly want to get this subject blown out or made more widely accepted than ever before, by contacting people like Jeremy Corbell, Andy Marcial, George Knapp. Let's go down the line. Give me some other people here. Like UFO Magazine, Richard Dolan with the Wilson Davis memo, you know, like all of these actions are coming behind people, from people that are trying to instigate some kind of change. And I think there is good reason to question and be skeptical or paranoid. I sure am. But I do also get to know some people and realize there is still just some innocence out there. And there are some good people that are trying to get this information out to the public. I'm not quite sure Bob was trying to slip his dick into the opposing, I don't know, DHS agent or something like that by releasing these UAP videos with some permission to Andy Marcial. But, you know, you look at some of the less credible UAP videos that have been brought out, debunked, claimed to have been Malaysian airline abductors and stuff like that. That could actually be a dick being slipped into people. And I think, you know, you have to be skeptical about a bunch of that because there's no chain of custody to those videos. There's no official source for them. We're talking about official sources here, real people and real departments, agencies that they came from. So I think that is a bit better of a litmus test. You know, am I on board with Lou? I am on board with Lou Elizondo. I think he's done some great things in terms of blowing this subject up in mass media, right? People can argue all day about his credibility and other people that are surrounding him and so on and so forth. But I've met people, like I said, and I'm a pretty good judge of character, and I scrutinize people pretty quickly. Andy, I think, is a good dude, and I don't think he was had by Bob. I think he was just approached by a very honest individual.
Well,
one of the tapes.
Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say one of the tapes. Have you seen the tapes, Darcy?
The UAP videos?
Yeah, the videos that Andy was given. Have you seen them?
Yeah, I've seen them.
Okay. So one of them says that the object flew around a police helicopter. Is that correct?
No, one of them, that incident happened a month before the 810 incident. That was the one where the police and the Department of Homeland Security choppers were chasing the unknown object or drone or whatever it was, up to 11,000 feet up in the air. They supposedly said it was flying at and chased it for over an hour at over 100 miles per hour and eventually lost it. But a month later, that's when the 810 incident was captured.
All right, only because they're talking to Bob Thompson about this, and I'm not going to get into him again, but I'm saying to you, there's the article that says UFO flies circles around police helicopters, reveals border agent who's seen things. And so if there's a tape out there that shows a UAP flying around a helicopter, I want to see it. I'm sure a lot of people. I have yet to see that. Darcy, do you know about that?
They definitely have. They definitely have some kind of footage because, I mean, you had two choppers, and there was FLIR, there was, you know, all this optical equipment on board. So,
have you seen it, Andy?
I haven't seen it. I know that it happened. I know that they had equipment because I saw the original transcripts before it even hit the.
Yeah, it would be
before it even went public. I knew about it because he had informed me about it first.
It'd be pretty rare, Andy, this time in this age that anything that's flying in law enforcement does not have the equipment you're talking about. I mean, it's right up there with the basic suite like radios and everything. And
yeah, exactly. So it's
now recording it, broadcasting the information. Well, when you talk law enforcement and you talk these kinds of sensors, recording is, again, just as basic because you have to have it as evidence. And as Darcy said, chain of evidence is real important. You know, it's going to have position data, time data, because if you ever want to bring this into a courtroom, you got to have something to base it on. So now, it not being disclosed, it being held off, that I can understand as well. But quite honestly, this day and age, anything past 2010, you're talking almost any aircraft is out there is recording and has the ability to put a fairly, it may not be great optics, it may not be great infrared that's working, but you have something there.
Yeah, and I would say, like, just to bring this back to, say, the Aguadilla footage, right? Everything that has been described in that footage by skeptics or by, true believers, we see happening in the footage. It's not like a after the fact testimony, like, well, then we saw it shoot off in the sky out of the ocean and was chased by a flying spaghetti monster,
Yep.
We actually are seeing all the things being demonstrated, the transmedium capabilities, flying over the airport. It's unnoticed by the ground crew. It's unnoticed by all kinds of things, right? So, anomalous object, in my opinion. But we haven't seen the supposed full footage, or maybe we have, people will debate. We've seen the whole footage for the floating octopus in Iraq, right? But we hear testimony that the longer version of that, it comes out of the ocean and then shoots off. I don't know. I haven't seen that. But, I'm going to scrutinize the stuff we've seen the full footage for and try to point to some truth or point to some, like, untruths about it, for sure.
I know Department of Homeland Security's got way more than just what we released, if you consider the fact that they have the most, I guess, the most genuine and convincing videos out there so far. Like, everything else is just small little clips. They're the only organization that's actually, that at least something has come out from them that has, to this day, been some of the best evidence.
So let me throw something into the mix here, and I want to hear Don and Chris react to it. If CBP, if DHS units, assets were to get into something that is DOD, if you capture that, classification would be attached to it, and no one's jumped up and stopped that, if that makes sense. If you inadvertently see something, capture something, very quickly, and this is what I think happened with Tic Tac, very quickly you're going to get controls on that. And within government agencies, that can happen within minutes, if not sooner. So to me, it's very interesting that this stuff was released. If it does show terrestrial, our asset kind of stuff being captured, a couple things happen right off the bat. Don't want to draw any more attention to it, or it's not any kind of a major, and I really want your reaction, gentlemen, after Chris and Don react. A lot of times I think we're being tracked what we discuss. So when you see something, when your documentaries come out, and now you start to watch the chatter, you start to watch, where's the conversation going? What are people saying? What are they, who else is getting into that? The trolls that go after you, Darcy, on that, who's saying what going on there? I think that is a huge part of the daily collection that goes on in the new world, new media that we live in. And we're being tracked by how we feel, what we say, what's going on. So, Don, I haven't heard. Jump up a little bit for me.
Sure. Look, I got to tell you, I guess the most honest way to say it, I'm very jaded and I'm very skeptical. I've been butting heads with entities within the Pentagon, within NASA, other government agencies going back to the beginning of the 90s. And I gotta honestly say I believed at that time, my bottom gut told me that we'll never know much more than I knew at that point. Now, granted, in 2017, in December, with Reed coming forward like he did, and later with the unidentified show that was on, look, the idea at that point that a undersecretary of state for intelligence would come forward, all right, and I've said it on this program before, told me one of two things. Number one, there was something coming down the road toward humanity that the powers that be were aware of, and they had to begin preparing the public the best they could and releasing very little. Or number two, the other possibility I saw was that this was the biggest dog and pony sex show, okay, since Operation Mongoose and the Cuban Missile Crisis back in '62. So, what does that mean? Well, it means, number one, I'm not sure, and number two, I'm very skeptical. Unless I had the opportunity to sit down with these guys, look them right in the eyes, and then do my detective thing, maybe I would change my mind. Maybe. But I got to say, this kind of stuff, for the most part, I see nothing but more smoke and mirrors. And
We should
that's my
set that
bottom
up.
line.
We should set that up, Don. I'll get the camera and we'll get you in front of some of these folks. You can ask them some hard questions.
That would be some pretty good TV.
Let's see. Let's see. Look, you probably don't know what I did when I was in the military in Southeast Asia, but I was involved with intelligence gathering operations. And I'm not saying I'm the world's leading authority on this bullshit, but I do have a working knowledge of it. Okay. So there's that.
When he uses the poetic language, Darcy, Andy, I mean, you just can't help but
so
smile.
diplomatic.
You just can't help but smile and nod and feel like it's a lullaby. You know, for those of us on the East Coast, many people are gently pulling the covers up to their chins after this show going, Uncle Don just tucked me in.
You know, Don, who else was in Southeast Asia? Michael Herrera. Do you think he was?
Don't bring that up. Do not bring that up to him.
Do you think
Do
he
not
was
go there, Darcy. Darcy,
doing
do not go to. Oh shit!
That guy is as full of shit as a Christmas turkey at Christmas. Okay, or maybe a Christmas goose, depending on which is bigger. Chris and I and Commander Cobra, we've discussed that guy on several occasions.
Oh, God, I was getting chest pains as soon as you said that, Darcy.
There's a lot of folks like that. There's a lot of folks like that, and it will keep popping up because, like I said, this topic is going to attract sometimes the wrong people.
Well, I mean, you're always going to have hustlers. You're going to always have people that are looking for attention, people that just latch onto that. I mean, that's all part of the human experience, and no doubt about that. It's when I get upset, and again, this is why I compliment both of you on this and on the documentary. You did the due diligence. You know, you are respectful of the people that are talking. And you at least do the check. You know, that there's some verification. Obviously, you can't show me in your hands but you go through the process of, okay, tell me your story, and then you try to put together the age-old thing, the person that tells you about, well, I was in this field and this is what happened. And then the investigator goes out to the field and nothing looks the way the person told you that it was. And then you find out they were never in that field. In fact, and then when you do a couple more steps, you find out they were never even in the area at the time that they make the claim. And then you start to find out, oh, we're being had here a little bit. Nowadays, folks will run. Someone pops up and says this, and there's no need to check. There's no need to even do the least little bit of that, because why? If you get caught just perpetuating a lie, it's not a pleasant word. There's no retribution anymore. We just go on to the next thing. Now, you are making a living at this, and your presentation is your reputation. Now, that is becoming a rare commodity. Don, and what Don did with his wife, Vicky, at UFO Magazine was that. I think the print media followed not that everything that came out wasn't tabloid, but I'm saying you had to follow some of that standards to go on there. If you've ever listened to stuff that Don has talked about, Gordon Cooper, having meetings with him and having him describe what he experienced over the whole arc of his career, that's verifiable. That's there. You don't have to agree or believe, but at least it goes through the process. So the PSYOP, as you put, Darcy, which is a perfect term to use for this, there are many of them going on because there are many factions that are trying to just pull the attention to something else while they do something else.
There's a criminal action to all this UAP stuff because there's a lot of money missing. That I do know. There's a lot of money that's unaccounted for.
Right. And it's very handy to have projects to cover that. You can only do so much with B-21s. You can only do so much with B-2s. You can only do so much with black budgets. And you're moving stuff around to get that. Sometimes there's good reasons to do that, Chris. There's sometimes there's
but there's also the
government not to tell you what's going on because people can be way down at the end of the line.
What was that Pentagon report that came out on September the 10th, 2001?
We can't account for some unbelievable amount of
half their budget,
$1 billion
their budget.
Trillion.
Couldn't account for it, and then the next day the world
lost
changed.
$3.3 trillion, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Multiple billions. It was $1 trillion disclosure.
And who the hell remembers it?
Nobody.
It's sort of like Farrah Fawcett. I always call this the Farrah Fawcett example. She died the same night that Michael Jackson died. No one knows that. No one keeps carrying. Oh, by the way, this is the passing of Johnny Cash. He passed away on this day. One of my favorite artists. Bill just let me know that we're down to 7 minutes. So I want to let you know that I'm going to have to grab the screen from you in about 5 to 6 minutes. Cool. What else happened today? Oh, Metallica's album. God, I can't remember the one. The one Magnetic. That came out.
Can I jump in here for a second, Cobra?
Absolutely. I mean, when I start talking Johnny Cash and Metallica in the same breath, you need to jump in. There's people on the West Coast. There are people on the West Coast right now jumping in the water going, save me, come and take me up.
I just want to say this to Darcy and Andy. It's time for this or type of ufology to start asking hardball questions. And that's one of the reasons why we have this show. We don't go, ooh, oh my God, that's so great. Oh my God, that's so good. Oh my God, this is so wonderful.
We do occasionally go, oh shit.
Yeah. But what we do is
give
we ask
sexual analogies and illusions.
And what we need are documentary people like Andy and you to ask those hardball questions. I mean, as myself, I'm a retired homicide detective. And my forte was to go in with murderers and get them to confess. And you know, I'm a trained interviewer and interrogator. And I decided that we've got to start asking hardball questions in this field. You know, I was a skeptic at first, and I became a believer in this. But if we just start agreeing with everything that everybody's saying, we will never get to the truth, because the government will say, let them go on this path. Let them go. And until we get off that path where we're going, oh my God, that's so great that happened to you, and turn the subject around toward, no, I want to start seeing facts. I want to start seeing stuff that can be credible, put it toward a fine point where we can follow that will lead us to the truth. Does that make sense, Darcy, what I'm saying to you? And it's got to be documentaries like you.
I mean, like, I'm trying to ask the hard questions. I am favorable towards a lot of my subjects in my docs, but I want to have the most credible information out there. And one of my next film, I ask a ton of hard questions, and there's going to be probably some hell to pay publicly when that thing comes out. There's going to be money followed. There's going to be cult leaders upset. It's going to happen. It's going to drop, and it's going to probably make a bit of an explosion. But, you know, I feel like it's worth it because it's the truth, and the truth turns me on. To be honest, I start feeling like slipping that into people.
A smaller part of the sect, the truth turns you on. But I mean, I love hearing that, because that's exactly what we need.
Yeah, we don't want lies slipped into people. We want truth slipped into people. So I'll keep trying to do that and get their permission. Andy, over to you.
Chris, you really want to ask the real questions. Then start looking into the human mutilation aspect of this.
Don and I have already talked about that. Yeah, look at Don laughing.
That's where the real questions.
You know who started that, Andy?
Who?
Me.
Linda Moulton Howe? Oh.
I was going to say Linda, but she did the cows.
No, I did. Back in 88, 89. I was having a conversation with John Keel. Do you know who John Keel was?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, well, he was quite the researcher back in the day.
Sure was.
He was the guy that wrote the Mothman prophecies.
Okay.
His investigation down in West Virginia, the Mothman, the collapse of the bridge, etc. Well, anyway, we were having a discussion. I had investigated as a criminal investigator 2 cattle mutilations.
Don, I got to pull you to a minute.
Okay. Make a long story short, he mentioned some human mutilations he was aware of. I jumped on that path. For almost 4 years, I chased that story down. Incurred hate all across the UFO field, especially from the love and light people. Never cracked the case, never solved it, but I proved beyond any doubt they are real. Contrary to what you'll hear. Okay,
I have.
I'm good.
Look into Guapangata in Brazil. That's all you need to know.
Yeah. Let me just say this: that I have spoken to Mark Anthony. We had a large talk about this, but we have a theory as why that's happening, and on a later date, you and I can discuss that.
So I'm going to grab the close in the show here. Andy, Darcy, absolutely phenomenal to have you guys with us tonight. I really thank you for taking the time out of the schedules to join us. I also want to say you have a lot of people, a lot of fans out there in the chat room tonight that I was able to pick up. Eric, Genghis Khan, Dallas, and Kathleen, thank you very much for joining us and throwing some supportive remarks into the chat. Commander Cobra, KGRADB at Gmail. I love when folks send me ideas, comments, and stuff like that. I share it with the rest of the team. And, you two, Darcy, Andy, you really need to consider coming on board with us maybe more often and then joining us. You guys really need to put a show together. I think it would be great to see you guys, if you can figure out how to do, because you think once a week, oh, God, it's so easy. And I'm looking at Darcy, once a week. the amount of stuff that you have to, the hoops that you have to jump through, you know, talking with Don and Chris when we were setting up the show, you know, there obviously is a huge commitment, but I think you guys connect with the audience really well. And I really, really am a big fan of your work. I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Thank you again for joining us, and to the great audience, the greatest on the planet. Commander Cobra for Don Ecker, Chris DiPerno, and our special guests, Andy and Darcy, tonight. Been tremendous to have you on UAP Crossfire. Absolutely thumbs up. I can't do the Vulcan thing. I wish I could. I have to do it like this. I just don't have those talents. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. It's been great. Maybe we'll pop back on sometime soon. So
well, definitely when this next one drops, Darcy, I if we do a pre-show or maybe a post-show, but we need to keep in touch. I think you got a great thing going on, and I'm a big fan.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Always appreciate your company.
Good night, all.
Take care, guys.